The following is a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
From the birthplace of modern winemaking, Sonoma, California, welcome to The Winemakers. Local experts Sam Couturi, Bart Hansen, and Brian Casey, along with host John Myers, invite you to listen in as they discuss all facets of winemaking. So sit back, pour yourself a glass, and let's hear what the guys have to say this week.
Ready to drink.
You're on red. All right. Welcome, everybody. We are indeed the Winemakers, a truncated staff at the moment, but Brian Casey and I, John Myers, are sitting here with Aaron Pott from the end of Mount Veeder Road, hanging up there. Wow, what a beautiful spot. Welcome.
Thank you.
And you are, well, we already talked about this. You want to be introduced as International Man of Mystery and owner and
He's
winemaker.
a fucking Napa legend.
I like it. So International Man of Legend, legend, whatever you want to call it.
And worked with some incredible people over the years. And
Maybe we'll find out about that, Brian.
I'm hoping too, John.
Cheers, gentlemen.
Cheers.
And maybe we'll all be really happy this week, as it is Election Day tomorrow.
Oh, that's right. This is being recorded on Monday, day before. Exciting.
Yep. Well, hey, here in the bubble of Slow-Noma, I mean, I think everything is kind of cool, but it seems like Measure J is going to go down in flames, which is awesome.
Yeah,
I'm hoping
I
for
think
that.
was a
big
foregone
time.
conclusion.
Hey,
but
do you have anybody activists in Napa County that are trying to corral any of your hard work or friends who are raising or growing anything over there?
do you know what Measure J is over here?
Yeah,
Okay.
I do. We have lots of friends that are raising and growing.
Yeah.
I even, when my mother was 82, she died this year, unfortunately, at 92. But when she was 82, she broke her hip. And I had to sort of look after her finances to see how she was going to live out the rest of her life. And I found a $700,000 discrepancy in her finances, and it turned out my dear mother, Mrs. Pott, had a giant grow operation in Santa Rosa.
Wait a minute.
Had purchased
Excellent. This is a great
Are you for
story.
real right now?
20,000 square foot grow operation that my mother, who had, as far as I know, had never smoked weed in her entire life.
How did she get into this?
She met two nice people, and they got her to invest in this project, and it turned out to be a great investment. I mean,
Did you bring any samples this morning?
No.
Oh, okay. You brought one, and we're doing the Zen right away. Man, it's beautiful this morning. Oh, nice.
Sorry, that threw me for a curve. So what do you do now? You just
So we sold the operation.
Okay.
And that's what kind of paid for the rest of her 10 years of life. So
wow.
and she just
See, you can set yourself up like that. Yeah. Buy a plot of land, grow some weed, retire. As Bart knocks over the olive tree.
Morning, Bart Hansen.
great entrance bar.
I like it.
Good to meet you too.
Well, okay. Mount Veeder. How was Mount Veeder Road this morning coming down?
Lovely, actually. Yeah.
How's the weather?
I mean, there's never anybody on it, so you just have to avoid the deer and the mountain lions, and you're fine.
Speaking of deer and mountain lions, I love your label because you've got wildcats on the label of Pott wine. P-O-T-T, by the way, not.
Yeah. So these
Like
are new
weed.
for me. They're my neighbors, Steve Legier and Dr. Carol Meredith, the famous grapevine geneticist.
There we go. Thank you, Bart.
Decided that they were going to not make wine from their vineyard anymore. And I had coveted their vineyard from day one. I helped them plant their first cover crop on the property, helped them clear a lot of the property, took care of their vineyards when they would go away on vacation, rarely. And they decided that they wanted to let us have their property to make wine off of. So we're now making Syrah and Zinfandel and a little bit of Mondeuse from that property. So it's all under a new label for us, Legier Meredith Vineyards, but under the Pott Wine flagship label.
I mean, when I read about that, it was such an awesome thing that they did.
Yeah.
I mean, they obviously think a lot about you and the wines you make. It's very, very cool. It's just something you don't hear in this day and age.
Well, they're awesome people. I mean, I think we can thank Carol Meredith in the wine world for getting rid of a lot of the bullshit that occurs in this industry. As she said herself, there's more bullshit in the wine trade than any other industry in the world. And I think she may be right about that. But she's definitely done a lot to get rid of that, especially with her research.
And was that original when they planted up there? Did they plant Zinfandel and Syrah?
They originally planted all Syrah.
Wow.
And then they took some vines that were Syrah and budded them over to Zinfandel, Malbec, and Mondot.
And kind of odd for that region, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Very
most
odd.
people think of Cabernet, Bordeaux varietals growing up there on.
Yeah. And Carol doesn't like Cabernet, so it's she has a very sensitive palate to tannin and doesn't like the intense tannins of Cabernet Sauvignon.
Huh.
And I'm glad she doesn't, because I think the Syrah grows beautifully up there, and it's really the variety that draws me into that vineyard.
Yeah. Well, you tell the story about how you bought that piece of property too. It's kind of cool. It's kind of, I mean, I think I've heard before you said you were interested in that region and you thought it would always be nice to purchase it. And wasn't it just like one day you were coming down off the hill and some guy was putting up a sign?
It's exactly that. I mean, my wife and I decided we wanted to get a property in Napa Valley. And we looked everywhere, and I was making wine off the O'Shaughnessy property on the top of Mount Veeder, and just fell in love with the wines I was making there. And I said to myself, I really think we should look for something on Mount Veeder. And literally, as that thought came into my mind, I'm driving down the road, and there's a guy putting out a real estate sign that's has a property for sale. And the property was for sale, and it turned out to be for sale next to my long suffering friends, Steve Legier and Carol Meredith. So I first brought them over to look at the property to see if it was worthy to plant grapes to. I brought my old friend John Kongsgaard over to see if the property was worthy to plant grapes on, and then we just jumped into it like fools.
What year was that?
2004.
Okay. And there was no structures on the piece of property?
There's an old house on the property that's quite unique. It was built by Harold L. Davis, who was the Pulitzer Prize winner for literature in 1938.
Wow.
And wrote a book called The Honey in the Horn, which is not a gay erotic novel. It's it's a novel about Oregon pioneer life and unrequited love and all sorts of wonderful things, and shows you how important the Pulitzer Prize is these days, because nobody knows who H.L. Davis is.
Right.
But he built the house up there, and it's an extraordinary house that's made out of one single redwood tree.
Cool.
All redwood. Beautiful spot.
And so you had to start from scratch up there as far as putting a vineyard in?
Yes. Yeah.
And had the land been farmed for anything, or was it just forest?
There were plum trees on the property, but they had been abandoned throughout the 20th century.
Yeah.
So cattle had been run on the property, plums, and that's about it. And we took the area that had been planted to plums and converted that over to grapes. And it's had essentially no chemical agriculture on it ever,
Right.
which is I'm very proud of.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I know, because are you only farming organic vineyards or only making wines from organic vineyards at this point?
I wish I could say that 100%. Under my label,
Don't we all?
I only work with organic vineyards, and my vineyard is very strictly organic. And the Legier Meredith vineyard as well is very strictly organic. But we do work with clients that have vineyards that are not organically farmed.
Right.
So, but everything under the Pott Wine label is organically farmed.
Cool. Well, let's go back a little bit. Well, you're born and raised in Oregon, right?
Where?
Yes, Eugene.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice part of the country, isn't it, up there?
Yeah, beautiful.
Oh, I love Oregon, man.
Again, back to Ken Kesey.
The whole thing. Well, yeah, you brought that up earlier about Stanford. You've got 2 daughters, right? One getting ready to head out to college and would really like to go to Stanford.
She would, yeah.
And is it only because of Ken Kesey, or is it because she wants to study something down there?
It's because she wants to study something.
She's a senior?
Yeah, she's a senior.
Yeah. Well, I have a senior also. The college is we're in on like 12 of them. And so now a little bit of pressure has been relieved.
Decision-making time.
It's exciting.
No, yeah, for the colleges.
Oh, okay.
We're just going to wait and hear.
Yeah, it's a little nuts, John, now. Yeah.
You didn't have to do that back in my day. You just went. If you had money, they took you.
So how long did you live in Eugene?
Till I was 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
And from there?
From there to England, to Oxford.
Okay.
My father was doing a 2-year study there and worked at the Center for Medieval and Renaissance Studies in Oxford, England. And I went along.
What does that mean? What do you do?
Well, I mean,
medieval.
He was an expert on the Reformation, Protestant Reformation, and especially on John Calvin, and that was his world. And he was working on a book on that, and then teaching on the side.
So was he a teacher at a college or a professor, or
he was a Presbyterian minister as well as teaching at the theological seminary at U of O, and then later at UC Davis and San Anselmo in Marin County.
Oh yeah, I know where that is.
So at what age are you moving over to England?
10.
At 10.
Yeah.
You go over there and that's kind of a little, or maybe it wasn't coming from Eugene, Oregon, a little culture shock.
Little culture shock. Yeah, little culture shock.
Because I know you speak French. Where did you learn to speak French?
In France. It's actually
on the job.
It's a funny story because my father told me in high school that I couldn't take French, that I should take Spanish because everyone in California speaks Spanish, so you need to learn Spanish. And I said, okay, I'll take Spanish. But every day in Spanish class, I would, if there was a project I had to do, I would write something about something in France. I was a real kind of Francophile, and I was working in the Spanish language. So where did
that come from? Sorry to interrupt.
I just a love of France. I mean, the first time I went to France, I was 9 years old.
Yeah.
I'm in a bistro in Paris. I order a glass of milk, and the waiter looks at me and says, "Milk is for babies," and brings a glass of wine. So it was really fundamental in my growth, and I think it's been an important part of my wine journey to be kind of connected to France.
Yeah.
So I'm an undergraduate at UC Davis, and I have the opportunity to take any classes I want to without my parents interfering with that. So the first class I take is a French class, French 1, essentially, and I have this incredibly super hot teacher for this French class. And after the class finishes, she asks me to have a drink, and I say, well, that's great, except for the fact that I'm not old enough to drink. But that started a relationship that ended up having me learn more French than I should have, because I followed her to France to spend some time there. And
wait a minute,
so did you have the drink eventually?
Yeah. No, I mean we had a love thing for a while.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And is that unusual going to UC Davis to have French 1? Don't most kids learn it in high school, and then sort of when you get to college, I didn't realize they had like introductory French classes in college.
They do have introductory French classes in college.
Huh. Okay.
So, I mean, as I say it, my French was fluid after that experience, and not fluent, and then it would become fluent after going to the University of Burgundy and getting a master's degree in viticulture, and then working for 6 years in Saint-Emilion, running a chateau there.
What city is the university in?
Dijon. Yeah.
Cool spot.
Yeah, very cool spot.
Beautiful. And the wines are spectacular there.
Beautiful city, beautiful people. I got adopted by a local anarchist bar, and they took great care of me. And
it sounds like you had a
experience.
good time. I'll just start right there.
So wine was introduced to you at that trip to Paris. Was that the first introduction to wine? Was it part of the family? Was it on the kitchen table?
Yeah, my father did a postdoctorate in Heidelberg, and he was with a professor that loved German wines. And my father had really sensitive taste, and fell in love with the kind of sweeter German wines, the TBAs and the BAs and the ice vines and so on. And so he had a modest collection of them that would be under that weird closet underneath the stairs,
right.
And some of the bottles would self-open on hot days, kind of thing.
Right.
But I mean, it was on the table on Sunday afternoon for dinner, and it was an important part of their world. I mean, my parents thought they were those kind of people that think Europeans are way more sophisticated than we are, and that we have to do everything that Europeans do. So they fell in love with wine, I think, as part of that.
Yeah.
And then I think it was also the era of James Bond, so you needed to know something about wine if you wanted to get the girl. So,
of course.
That was a key part about my wine education too, I think.
Right.
I think that was my first kind of inkling about wine too, was watching James Bond movies, and when he would go to like casinos or somewhere in Monaco or restaurants, and he would order, some older
59
wine.
Lafite.
Yeah, and I always thought, man, that must taste really good if James Bond is ordering it. And then, the first time I had a really old wine, I was completely disappointed, thinking that it was going to taste like a milkshake, when I was younger, and it tasted like wet leaves and forest floor, and I thought, what the hell is all the hype about?
It is funny because growing up with wine on the table, but it was never anything of any distinction. And then with Bond movies, wondering, well, why is that so important? Why does he make such an effort? And my father was a huge Bond fan, so we would watch those movies every time they came out.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I mean, he literally kills two people for making a mistake.
Correct. Yeah. Because he knew
wine knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Maybe not because of the wine knowledge, but that showed him that they had no wine knowledge.
All right. So, and we skipped over a little bit of stuff. You were going to UC Davis and interning here in Napa Valley.
Yeah, and that was with Steve Legier. I was interning as a lab guy and vineyard sampler for Robert Mondavi Winery, and at the time we were doing the Opus 1 wines in the Robert Mondavi Winery, so that was all kind of one thing. And so I was working for Robert Mondavi Opus 1.
You're how old?
I mean, 18, 19.
I get, and I apologize because I came in late. Maybe you started on this, but
no.
Okay. So when did you go? Wine is my path.
I really think that it was that first trip to France when I was, told that milk was not my path.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And when you're 9 years old, you don't want to be considered a baby.
Right.
And if somebody tells you that you're ordering this beverage, you're a baby, you need to be drinking this wine.
Yeah.
And I think that was a real moment. And then we visited other wineries on that trip, and I noticed that there were kind of three things that I loved about the world of wine that I wanted to have in a career. And they're very 9-year-old three things, but everybody worked outside, and I thought, I don't want to work inside. I want to work in a vineyard outside. That seems like the best place to be. And then they all had dogs. You're 9 years old, you want to have a dog,
right,
following you around. And then they all lived in these like spectacular 15th century domains,
Right.
Oh yeah.
So that's going to add to the mystique.
Yeah, I'm kind of 2 out of 3 on this thing.
Yeah.
But doing pretty well. Got the dog.
It's fascinating to hear where these things come for people,
Have your daughters taken to France like you did?
Not as much as I have, but they have to a certain extent. I mean, we have a wonderful friend over there who was the winemaker at Château La Tour for 13 years, and he's kind of he calls himself their godless father, and they get to spend a lot of time with him in Entre-deux-Mers at his place, and he makes France a lot more appealing to them, except for the 10-year-old eel that he serves.
Yes, longfish.
Yeah.
Yes, I have I had longfish. That is true, John. Thanks for that reference.
I get the sense that you are truly a country French guy, not a Parisian.
Yeah. I mean, I lived in Saint-Emilion, so
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, gorgeous town.
There's always this thought that people have once they get over there. It's like, maybe we could just find a little place and fix it up and just retire here and not do anything except eat duck and drink wine. And it's a little more difficult, I have to say. I mean, having looked at real estate in both Paris and in Beaune and the Loire, the ones that are affordable are indeed dumps and need a lot of work. And
Yeah.
I've seen chateaus that they have photos of them when they were working and beautiful, and then they're stripped. I mean, people take libraries out and sell them, and staircases that you can't get to the second floor because there are no stairs in it. And they sold them, just to live, I guess. But the fact that these chateaus exist and you can go in and reconstruct them, there's amazing places around France.
Well, that's great. I mean, I really admire those people that are keeping those properties up because they're not easy to keep up, and they're beautiful and part of our culture as human beings.
Yeah, and it's so funny because we think things here in the States, if they're 150 years old,
Yeah.
you got some history behind them.
I know. It's funny when we talk to people coming in the tasting room about Buena Vista in 1857, and then you have, I think someone came in the tasting room yesterday and was talking about a winery they went to in France that was, started by monks in like the 1100s, and completely different thing.
Well, that's true we have a sister city program here in Sonoma, so we have sister cities that are similar to us around the world, and Pang like China, Italy, Ukraine, and Chambol-Mucinet in France, and it's near Dijon. It's just north of Dijon and Beaune. Beautiful
Nobody's gonna
spot.
forget Chambol-Mucinet, I think.
And the abbey there is a spectacular place where they started making wine.
Can you tell that John's ready to go on his trip?
Right, exactly. Okay, I want to go back to the wine for a second.
Well, can we talk about the Zin before we...
Well, that's what I was going to do.
Cool, perfect.
So the Zin, what I love about it is its subtlety. It's like pure aromatics of Zinfandel, which I really love. It's beautifully balanced. It's elegant. Yeah. And then the reason why I wanted to say that is because then I poured the Syrah, and the Syrah is like exploding out of the glass, which is just also beautiful. So looking forward to hearing about it.
Yeah, I think where we were with the Zinfandel is that so many Zinfandels have become way over alcoholic, and I think port is it's as close to port as you can get.
And it's scared off consumers.
Yeah.
I see it every day in the tasting room when I offer Zinfandel, and and I hear it's the only grape that I hear people say, "Oh, I don't like Zinfandel," and it's such a shame that people have this sort of preconceived notion of what it is.
And it can be wonderfully juicy and have wonderful acidity, and this Zinfandel makes you want to have another dish of pasta. You want to have another slice of pizza
or another glass.
Or another glass.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I love the juiciness of Zinfandel. I love how well it cuts through the spice of foods as well. So it's perfect for spicy foods.
Well, do you go out to eat very much over in Napa?
Yes.
So you probably hit some nice restaurants. I'm starting to see Zinfandel on more food and wine pairings for 7-course dinners, whereas people just used to talk about Zinfandel with like barbecue. It was like your everyday man's wine that you would have with at Sunday barbecue or something. But I'm starting to see it on some cool tasting menus, which is a good thing. Yeah.
I mean, it feels like people are pulling back on Zinfandel in general. I mean, no doubt that in the heydays of Zap, that Zinfandel, it was almost like you go to Zap and everybody's trying to out extract and out oak everybody. You just go from place to place, and it seems like people are pulling back from it.
For sure.
And then you would get to the end of Zap, and people would be like lying in the parking lot. For
sure.
You couldn't even move.
I always say that it was always started off kind of quiet, and then someone would drop a glass, and the decibels would triple, and it would go from a tasting to a drinking.
Bacchanal.
It wasn't all bacchanal. Yeah. So, but yeah, I love Zin, so that's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Can you talk a little bit about your, I'm going to say a dragon. I'm sure there's more of a story to it than that adorns the bottles.
Yeah, it's we call it the Incubo, and I had the first vineyard that I had at on our property at Mount Veeder. We called it the Incubo, and an incubo in Latin it means the nightmare, and in English it means a temple guardian or a spirit that hoards a treasure. So I think owning a vineyard is kind of all those things.
Yeah.
And I wanted to kind of find a character that would sort of personify all of those ideas of owning a vineyard. And I had a very good friend, who was super instrumental in my wine knowledge. And he had an incredible collection of wine and had been a collector for a long time. And he also had a painting by a painter named Lucas Cranach. And if you've ever seen a picture of Martin Luther, the Protestant reformer, you've probably seen a picture of Lucas Cranach, because he was a neighbor of Cranach's, and Cranach painted him a few times. And so this guy had a painting that was called Bacchus at the Wine Vat, that showed a very Protestant, aged, old Bacchus, drunk, sitting at his wine vat with a bunch of children running around the vat, out of control. And I looked in the corner of this painting at one point in time, and I saw this little symbol on the side, and it's actually the signature of Lucas Cranach. So I stole Lucas Cranach's signature. I'm hoping that none of his family are listening to this today.
And that's what this is?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, and so the little mini dragon, I mean, you look at it, and he's got a ring in his mouth.
Right.
And those are his wings above him. And so he's probably only about a foot long,
right?
If you think about it. So not very menacing, but he's flying through the air with that ring towards you.
Super cool.
That's super cool.
Yeah. No, it reminds me a little bit of the Stanley Mouse signature. Oh, thanks, John. John just pulled up a picture.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
Bacchus at the wine vat. Well, everybody seems to be having quite a good time in this picture. So
that was the idea.
I'm going to have to go
some more than others.
Study that.
I think the young woman at the bottom is having the most fun.
I see that.
So, how was harvest this year for you?
It was really good. I mean, we were worried about the intense heat. that we had, which wasn't quite as intense as 22. But I think, especially on Mount Veeder, our vineyard is very protected from the harsh heat.
Yeah.
We're an east-facing vineyard for the most part, and then we have Mount Veeder behind us, so to kind of block out the nastiness of the western sun,
The late afternoon to evening burn.
So I mean we pulled through it pretty well. I think most of my clients came through it well. I think the wines that came in after the heat were more interesting than the wines that came in before the heat.
Will you talk about that? In what ways do you think?
Well, I think things needed to ripen up, and we needed a push of some sort. It could have been more gentle, I think, than the kind of 100 plus degrees that we had. But I mean, that was the push that we needed to bring fruit in.
I mean, it is interesting. One grower here was saying that, he had excessive fruit that he was, didn't have a home for. And in his mind, part of his plan was, well, it's not getting ripe, so maybe I can turn it in for an insurance thing that it never got ripe. And that heat came, and all of a sudden he was like, well, so much for that. I got to figure out something else, And I don't know what he did with the fruit and whatnot. Maybe he got it sold, but that's where we were, though. We were at this point of like, things are not progressing along. And it's appeared to be later, and so that heat was integral for the year, and at least it wasn't 114; it was only 104.
And we still had reasonable humidity at that point. I mean, unlike in 2022 when we were down to single-digit humidity, we had pretty reasonable humidity.
Yeah. And so, of all of the vineyards you work with, what percentage is in Napa Valley?
Almost everything I work with is in Napa Valley.
Okay.
I work with a very small amount of fruit from Lodi for one of my projects, Mythical, that makes a little bit of Albarino.
Okay.
And that comes from Lodi, but everything else is from Napa. And I really, was a choice of mine because when I had kids, I wanted to be close to them, and I decided that I didn't want to travel anymore. I traveled so much, working, all over the world, making wine in Italy and France and Argentina and Chile. So I really wanted to be home.
Yeah.
And I really consider Napa home.
Yeah. Awesome.
And some of the places you worked at Newton. For a long time, right? With John Consgard.
Yeah, which was, that couldn't have happened any better. I mean, it was the perfect jumping off point. John Consgard is a brilliant winemaker and a brilliant man, and he's so generous with his time and his knowledge. He was willing to get me into the tastings. We had two consulting winemakers there, Dominique Lafont and Michel Roland, and I never missed a tasting with those guys.
Yeah.
When I was working with John, and then when I asked Michel Roland to find me a job working back in France, and he found me the winemaking position at Troplong-Mondot, I would call John on a regular basis and ask him panic questions in order to figure out what was going on in France. And he was always there to help me out. He's a really great person.
Yeah, what was kind of the biggest shock when you were first over in France making wine? Biggest difference, you think, from what was going on over here?
I think maybe the first thing that really struck me was the age of the equipment that we were working with. I mean, at the time I was at Troplong-Mondot, I mean, people wouldn't even recognize it from what it is today. It's been, they've invested so much money in the cellar. But when I was there, the destemmer was made of wood and, had a mild steel barrel in it. And just to try to get these things clean, Napa Valley UC Davis
Clean, yeah. Slightly different term.
was a different thing, and I was amazed at. It was such a unique thing to see how focused people were on the outside, so much more than they were in Napa at that time, focused on the vineyards, and that really changed me. Just being able to, not being able to, but having to do pruning and having to work in the vineyards as a winemaker was a great experience for me.
Do you ever think about all the great wines that were made without optical sorters and on, wood destemmers?
Yeah, I mean, every day. I mean, you try like a 47 Cheval Blanc, and the wine is like the squirreliest wine you've ever put in your mouth, but it's amazing.
Right.
And that wine was made with no heating, no cooling, no.
And can we make wine
anything
like that in this day and age?
I mean, some people do.
Right. I got it.
Well, and
You know what I'm
conversely,
saying.
Yeah.
Aaron, what did you learn in France that you have brought back here that's in your winemaking style today?
I think more
And growing style. I'd like to know
I
both.
mean, more of what I learned was working outside. Working with the vineyards, doing pruning, and so on. And then also, I mean, learning a lot of technique in Burgundy really helps me apply the Burgundian techniques that I learned to making Bordeaux wines.
Well, the term that comes to mind first for me in Burgundian wines is elegance. It's just they're very elevated for me and very supple, beautiful.
That may be partially due to the grapes they're working with, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Of course, yes.
It's not that they're just dressed nicer, John.
Well, no, I totally understand. But there's a difference there. It's just, you go to Burgundy and it's elevated style. Not sure
Drink a
what
lot
accounts
better than
for
I
it.
do, John.
Well, then, what can I say?
Aaron, this Syrah, again,
Beautiful. Yeah.
Complexity is really off the chart.
Yeah, I mean, I think, to your point, I think John, wines have to be elegant. That's what wine should be. Wines need to be elegant. They need to be complex. And I mean, I think to me, that's the first thing. And I think what the Burgundians really understand is that their sites, expressing their sites, get them that elegance. And we need more people operating like that here.
Speaking of French, Isabelle Gassier cruising by.
A little sighting.
Yeah.
Wild.
In the wild, yes. Speaking of in the wild, your labels are cool. So, and whose camera is this that's catching these cats? And so you must have a tremendous amount of wildlife on your property.
Yeah, we do. And the pictures that are on the labels, they're the road that connects Legere Meredith Vineyard to the Pott Art Vineyard. And it's a dirt road. It used to be the main stagecoach road from Sonoma to Napa. So we found a lot of unusual things on there. But it's like revolvers.
What?
Cool.
Horseshoes, all sorts of things. So there's 2 game cameras that I have up there, and they snap everything that goes by. Usually pictures of me, but oftentimes pictures of wildcats. We have a lot of mountain lions on the property. The Zinfandel has a big mountain lion on it. The Syrah has a bobcat on it. We've had many bear sightings up there, including a bear that died of natural causes up there. Yeah.
I didn't know there was bear in
Yeah.
that area.
Yeah. I mean, it's, there's, follow the Sugarloaf camera feed. It's remarkable how many bears are up there.
Wow. So are you worried? You said you have a dog. You guys probably don't have any cats, I would assume.
No, we do have a cat.
Do you? Are you ever worried?
Chickens and
You have chickens too?
yeah, and two
crap.
house rabbits.
Oh yeah.
What are you showing on this photo here?
Right.
That's a bear.
Okay,
from
that's
one
a-
of my
that's
game
definitely a
cameras.
bear.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's interesting that we live so close to all this wildlife and rarely see it. First of all, they come out at night. You know, I mean, all these are nighttime photos, correct?
Yeah.
And, you know,
We had a bear in our neighborhood 2 summers ago. It was getting into some trash cans, and people just changed their trash can, kind of philosophy, and it moved on. But it was caught on camera a couple times. And then, I mean, we still have mountain lion in the area. I live on Sonoma Mountain. But yeah, I mean, I always thought bears would never come that far west. Like, how do they cross Highway 12? The same way anybody else does, hopefully safely.
I know. What was the reason you put the cameras up initially? You were hoping to catch some of these animals?
Well, I had seen evidence of a lot of
Scat.
animals there, and I just wanted to see what was really out there. And it's been an amazing experience just to know that you're living with nature. I mean, I actually walked by this camera right before this mountain lion walked by the camera. So there's like only a 5-minute difference from when I walked by there and that mountain lion.
Not that the mountain lion was following you or anything.
Maybe.
dinner.
And
Late night dinner.
Yeah.
Would the bear eat grapes?
Bears do eat grapes, but we've never had bears in the vineyard.
Okay.
They seem more interested in the garbage cans.
Right.
Hey, boo-boo.
Yeah, exactly right.
All right, what should we taste next?
Let's try the Grenache. So this is
The original gangster.
original gangster Grenache, and this is part of the release of the Leger Meredith wines this week. We're also releasing the single vineyard wines from Pott that are off the estate.
Big
This-
week for you then.
This is from Stagecoach Vineyard.
And they are where?
They are on the eastern side of Napa Valley, right up on Pritchard Hill.
Yeah.
So is that north of Oakville, that Phil Farms, the Oakville Ranch that Phil
It's
Farms?
just to the east of it, actually.
Just to the east
yeah.
of it, okay.
So and above it,
Right,
But right there,
right.
that beautiful
Stagecoach is one of the higher vineyards on that side of the valley, right?
Yeah, it goes from about 1,200 feet to about 2,400 feet, and it's 1,100 acre property, so pretty big.
And Gallo owns it?
Owned by Sonoma's own Gallo.
Yeah. It's not Modesto's own Gallo?
Come on, we got to change the narrative now.
There was that time where Gallo said when they developed that big property up in Asti, and the rumor was always like, if Gallo has its way, there won't be enough of anything grown in Sonoma County to supply their Gallo of Sonoma brand. That obviously never quite happened.
The elevation difference, 1,400, 2,400. Do they plant to 2,400?
Yeah.
And what's the difference in yield and quality?
I mean, as far as we can see, I worked off of some of the higher vineyards at Stagecoach Vineyard. I was the consultant for Stagecoach Vineyard under the Krupp brothers.
Oh, cool.
And have worked with some of those upper blocks, and they're beautiful. I mean, tiny berries. We did a lot of Cabernet Franc at the higher altitudes, and a little bit of Syrah up there too, and they're wonderful, wonderful properties.
So the elevation is really actually good for it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't top out?
Well, I mean, there's no, 2,400 is the highest you can pretty much plant up there. So,
yeah. What are you at your spot on Veeder?
highest point is 1,600 feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty friggin' up there.
I mean, what we have, it's kind of unique because we're on a ridge line and we have kind of both sides of the ridge line. So on one side, you look out and you can see San Francisco and the bay, and on the other side, you're looking at Yountville and the city of Napa itself. So it's a very unique view.
Are you doing tastings at your place?
Occasionally, yeah. If special people want to come up, I'm happy to.
So they can call and get in?
Yeah.
Is it back in the barn tasting, or do you have a room that's set aside?
We have a
I love the barn.
elegant room.
No, I really do like the barn taste.
No, it's a bit.
You're
It's a
asking
bit.
a lot of
barn-
questions, John.
It's a bit rustic, John. It's a
I
little
like
bit
that.
rustic.
Which is cool. I love tastings like that where it's about the wine, not about the view necessarily or the cool furniture.
Yeah, I mean, we are real winemakers, and we don't do anything else. So it's our livelihood, and it's one of my pet peeves is, and I keep blasting the Wine Spectator for this, is famous people are getting involved in the wine industry, and they're essentially getting free publicity for being famous people.
Right.
And I'm not interested in.
I mean, you're not going and starting playing in the NBA next year, are you?
No, I'm going to avoid that.
Although he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated one.
Really?
Okay.
Little known fact.
That is true. Yeah.
Let's hear about this.
I just happened to be. My family happened to be on the finish line of a track and field event that included Steve Prefontaine.
Oh, are you in that picture?
Yeah.
Really? Oh, awesome.
So I'm looking very excited about the finish, and that's about it. But I do. My father was actually drafted into the NBA in 1954. So maybe
that true?
Yeah, maybe I can make that into something.
God, and I just pulled that out, the NBA reference.
Who would have been in the NBA that we would know the name of in 1954?
I don't know, Bob Cousy.
Yeah,
probably
there's
would-
one. Yeah,
That'll
would
work.
have been the only one.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
amazing.
All right. Well, why Original Gangster?
Well, it's a long story, and it includes Robert Smith at Quixote, actually.
Okay.
Because we
We'll give him a
first
ding out.
Yeah, Robert,
Yeah.
that's a ding.
Big Robert was a winemaker at Quixote, and we were making our wines there, and I was also consulting for Quixote, and absolutely love Big Robert. And I showed him this wine for the first time, and he said, "That's bad and bigger." And the response to that would have been straight up N-word from Ice-T's seminal album, Original Gangster.
Okay.
So we couldn't call it straight up N-word,
Right.
because that would have been very difficult to deal with. And so we called it Original Gangster after the Ice-T recording.
That's awesome. That's a good reference.
Yeah.
So
And I love T. I mean, he's...
do you guys you were there at Quixote, weren't you?
Yeah.
And do you remember the pictures on the barrels?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm assuming Ice-T would have been on the barrels of the Grenache.
Remember that? And I
Was
remember
indeed.
the uniquely painted hoops. And that was you, right?
Yeah, it was actually Jean-Louis Bossuet, who was the Cooper.
Right.
Well,
Well,
in
it was
France.
his Cooper, but it had something to do with you. I
Yeah, well, we loved. I had a love for the painted hoops,
Right.
And I had heard at one point in time that the way they separated the Premier Grand Cru wines from just the lowly wines at the docks when they would unload the barrels was that the wines, the Premier Grand Cru wines, would have blue hoops.
Okay.
And so we started painting the hoops blue, just for fun. And then one day we had
If you believe
a
it, it
visit
will happen.
from Jean-Louis Bossuet, and he came to Quixote, and Quixote is designed by Freudenreich Hundertwasser. It's this crazy color scheme, and built by Carl Domenii, and Jean-Louis fell in love with this place, thought it was so great. And the next thing I know, we're opening up the barrels, and they have, each of them has a different color hoop
no
on
way.
them. So that was kind of the origin of the Quixote barrels. And Carl Domenii was the owner at that time, the Ayatollah Domenii. And Carl absolutely loved the idea. I don't know if they're still doing it, because it's a Chinese group that has purchased the winery since 2014. And
Okay. What do you like about Grenache?
I love everything about Grenache. I mean, it's a wine that really speaks to me. Aromatically, I think it's wonderful. You know, you don't get characters like that in Cabernet Sauvignon, and I think it's a versatile wine. It can age well. It can be consumed young and fruity, or aged to perfection.
Yeah.
I love Grenache. It's a great grape variety, and I love Mourvèdre and Syrah as well. So
It's just interesting to see the term Napa Valley and Grenache together on the back of a bottle.
yeah.
Well, it's nice to see, because I think for a long time Sam liked to believe that he was the only person that made it. So, you know, it's been planted. There's more.
There's not much, though. By comparison, I'll say that.
I would imagine.
Well,
so, yes.
if anyone that has an accountant working for them would probably tell you not to plant Grenache if you're in Napa Valley, but I think it makes wonderful wines.
Yeah.
I'll say that, I mean, the interesting thing about this one, this is 2022, so we had that incredible heat wave in 2022, and almost everything on the east side of Napa that was Bordeaux varieties was raisins in 2022. But this, on the east side of Napa, west-facing vineyard, not a single raisin in the vineyard. I mean, just because Grenache is so much better at dealing with that intense heat than Bordeaux varieties.
Yeah.
I tell people that when I tell them, have you ever seen the movie Something About Mary? There's the woman, everyone knows that woman who lives in Florida that sits out in the sun every day with her little foil reflector on her face, smoking her Benson and Hedges, and she's basically orange. That Grenache is like that. It'll just kind of sit out there and cook.
Got to give Jonathan Richman a shout out for being in that film as the balladeer there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and Grenache needs some of that to break down the tannins that are within the skin. So that also. So.
Are you blending this?
There's a little bit of Syrah in here. Yeah.
How much?
About 5%.
That's delicious.
Yeah, it is.
Have you ever done Mourvèdre with the Grenache and no Syrah?
No, but we did do. I have this brand that my wife absolutely hates. Bless her. But it's called Pour ma gueule, which literally translates to "for my effing face," and there are wines that I make just for myself, and usually we do kind of weird varieties under that, and I did do a little bit of Mourvèdre under that label for 2023, and my wife is going to kill me when she hears this. Sorry, darling.
And that's not for sale. You just kind of make it for yourself, friends, and family.
We sell it, but. Okay.
But you're making it for yourself.
But I'm making it for myself,
Yeah, you're not concerned with what other people will be thinking of it.
Exactly.
Well, since you actually have to sell wine that you do make, how do people actually get in touch with you and
Nice, John.
and buy your wines?
Yeah, so
how do they reach you?
Pottwine.com.
Not P-O-T, P-O-T-T.
Yeah.
All right.
Most of it going direct to consumer. Do you...
Yeah, we try to get into restaurants and fine wine shops as much as we can. I hold a little bit back for that, but it's mostly direct to consumer.
And at this point, are there wines usually always for sale on the website, or is it a release and kind of waiting list sort of thing? What is the status there?
It's usually been a release and waiting list kind of thing.
Good for you.
And I don't know if that's going to change because...
Sure, because of all the everything. But at this point, if you're interested in your wines, get on the mailing list.
Get on the mailing list.
Get ready for it. You're saying that these are all new releases this week?
Yes. And it's an open mailing list. I'm not making people wait to get on the mailing list.
Awesome.
It's an open mailing list.
All right. Well, this goes live on Friday, so... maybe some people out there will sign up.
Yeah, because some of these wines were just released in the last week or so, right?
Yeah, these were released on Monday, so for the first time.
Cool.
Yeah.
Are we going to get to that big bad bottle over there?
Let's get to that big bad bottle.
Brian, you asked, you shall receive. What are we drinking? Oh,
So this is a Space and Time from my vineyard, and this is Kind of the reason why we bought a vineyard on Mount Veeder. It's Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Merlot blend, and it's sort of my answer to Saint-Emilion.
Holy cow! This is just so extremely different bouquet than the Grenache.
Oh
It's
yeah,
a totally different animal. Wow.
That's a beautiful little etching on there, Aaron. How much of this do you make?
we make about 125 cases of this.
Okay.
So. And then we have another wine that's almost 100% Cabernet Sauvignon from the vineyard that's called Incubo. And then I also make, off of this section of vineyard, we also make Viognier that's aged and fermented in clay amphora.
I'm super curious about that. Why are you putting it in amphora?
I like the freshness that I get from amphora, and it's, there's no barrel character covering up the wonderful fruit.
Yeah.
We also do a Cabernet Franc that's aged 100% in amphora too, and has no added sulfur dioxide. And it's just to get the pure expression of the Cabernet Franc fruit and not have any barrel interfering with that.
I love the title on there, Château du Pape.
Yeah, unfortunately, we can't use that anymore. That was the last last time you'll see it.
Did somebody come after you for that?
Yeah, we got sued. Well, we didn't get sued. We got a cease and desist order from lawyers in Washington, D.C. that represented Château du Pape.
And they just couldn't see Dupont, huh?
Yeah.
That's very wrong of them. I'm on your side.
It was funny, but so we had to change it.
Wow.
Did you release a wine one year that was called Smoking Pot?
It was called Pot Smoke, and it was in the 2020 vintage where we had all those fires. Right. I made wine off of my vineyard, and it was not smoke tainted, and I thought, I can't make all of the 4 wines that I generally make off of my vineyard because it will be too hard to explain to people that my wines aren't smoke tainted. Right. You should love them the same way you've loved any vintage. So I decided that I was going to take them all and put them into one wine and just call it Pot Smoke. Yeah. And so I had my niece hand draw a label for it.
Okay, cool.
I
just had heard it, and I never knew if it was just hearsay or if it was actually something. So there you go. Thank you. Straight from the winemaker.
Well, I was telling Aaron earlier when I first heard his name was when I was at the Fig, and we were carrying the Chester Zanville, which it had to have been a Rhone blend of some sort, maybe a white Rhone blend.
Yeah, so we had Marsanne, Roussanne blends, and we did a Viognier under that same label.
Yeah, and it was
called the Gretna Green at the time.
Thank you. That's what it was. Because, of course, what stood out in my mind was Hattori Hanzo, which anyone who's a Tarantino fan will remember was the sword from Kill Bill. Where do you come up with the references for some of the wines? Just being fun?
Well, for the Chester Zanville wines, and that was a project we did with Carol and Steve from Legere Meredith. And all of those came from things having to do with blacksmithery. Oh. So Hattori Hanzo was, in fact, a real guy in the 17th century who made kaitanas in Japan and was considered to be the great swordsmith of Japan. Oh, cool. And then was adapted by Tarantino in the Kill Bill films, which made it even more fun.
Right.
And Gretna Green was a place just across the border in Scotland from England where you could get married. So you could run away without your parents' permission and get married in Gretna Green at the blacksmith shop.
It's like the Vegas.
Yeah, essentially it was. I mean, it later came out in Downton Abbey that one of the daughters of the great grand house went up there to get married to a commoner at Gretna Green.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't need the parents.
Right. All right. So we got to try. How many different wines are you making under Pott Wines?
Oh gosh, I wish I knew.
Oh, it's like that.
It's about 9 different wines.
Okay.
And sort of narrowing that down to focusing mainly on the wines from the Legere Meredith property and our property. But we kind of got blindsided in 2022 because Steve and Carol just gave us this property out of the blue, and we were contracted to making other wines at that time as well. So we have more wines in the 2022 vintage than we have in the future or in the past.
Are the daughters interested at all in going into the wine business?
They're both interested in wine, and I've told them that I would love to have them come back and work in the family business, but they need to go study something else at college before they come back.
Yeah.
And they've always been in love with wine. I've played this game with them ever since they were both 3 years old, where if they can tell me 3 things that a wine smells like, I'll give them a taste of the wine. And I realized this was a great thing when my youngest daughter, when she was 5 years old, I opened up a wine from Burgundy. It was a Corton, a red Corton, and I put it in front of her and I said, "Tell me 3 things it smells like." And she said, "It smells like cherries. It smells like Burgundy." I was like, "Whoa, got a budding somm on my hands. We should buy her a really small suit."
Right. And more attitude.
Yeah, a lot more attitude.
That's awesome.
And where are you making the wines?
So we built a facility in 2018 that was a custom facility for all of my clients that don't have wineries. And we call it the Black Lab. And it was really, because it was financed by Blackbird Vineyards, we called it the Black Lab. And it's an ugly warehouse next to the DMV in Napa city of Napa. And it looks like a James Bond bad guy hideout on the inside. It has amazing materials to work with. So
meanwhile, in a deserted warehouse across town.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Aaron Pott.
Launch the missiles! Open up the volcano!
And you got a nice stereo system in there?
Yes. Yeah.
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 What are you listening to?
Need a better one.
What's your favorites?
Oh, I love music. I love to play music. I love to listen to music. I have a huge vinyl collection. I love jazz. I love classical. I love rock. I'm a big reggae dub fan. I love funk and soul. You name it.
Yeah, you mentioned jazz. We lost Quincy Jones yesterday.
Yeah, that's terrible.
I didn't know that.
I know he was a huge producer, and I met him one time with Ramsey Lewis in Chicago. Ramsey had a jazz record mart. Great guys, and went to see them play that night in Chicago. So yes, Quincy Jones with Ramsey Lewis was something else.
Wow.
Yeah. Just a nice little sit-in a club. I miss those clubs. That's one thing I do miss about Chicago's jazz clubs. But yeah, they got Blue Note and lots of things going on in Napa. Plenty of music.
Oh yeah. So, Aaron, anything else? I know you consult, and I know there's weird stuff that goes on with talking about that kind of stuff. I don't know if you want to shout out any other wines that you're making.
I have so many great clients in Napa Valley that I would be remiss not to mention several of them. But one of the faves right now is working with Pistoni, very old school 19th century Napa winery that we're updating some great vineyards. There's kind of a crossover with the Abreu family there that are part of the Pistoni world.
Wait a minute, don't they own the West Wine Tour? That's a weird connection. I just thought of that. Pistoni. There's some vintage Volkswagen vans that show up here on tours, and I think they purchased that from Jake 3 or 4 months ago.
Oh, that wouldn't surprise me at all. I don't know anything about it, but that wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, they're super creative people.
Audra's saying that's right. Yes.
Good, we got the clarification.
Yeah.
I mean, I work with Seven Stones, Blackbird, Saint-Émilion Winery, Perlis, Greer, Bernard Magret, Fee, Hoops, a little project called Covalence, and then Pestoni.
Wow. So you're
It's a lot.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, I mean, they're mostly small little projects, so it's they're pretty easy to do. And I have a great assistant that works with me. Shout out to him, Eric Hagyard. He and his wife own the only good bookstore in Napa, the Napa Book Mine.
Okay.
Cool.
Don't miss it.
Shout out for them.
Where are they? Downtown or
Downtown, yeah.
Okay.
Someone just said, it was yesterday or the day before, it said that Napa doesn't have any good bookstores or record stores. And I said,
Pointed out several.
Yeah, Folklore
Yeah.
for record stores. We've
And
got a
Right
great
On.
record store.
and Right On Records, right?
Yeah, Right On Records too,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
But Folklore is a
Nice
great...
jazz vinyl in there too.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Any other shout outs? Girls, anything?
Oh, yeah, I got to say hi to all my girls at home. Tosca and Isolde and my wife, Claire. They're what makes it all happen.
Yeah, no kidding.
Thanks for keeping them in line, Claire.
She's doing a terrible job.
Any plans for a vacation now that harvest is kind of wrapped up?
I've got to get out and surf somewhere, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna. It's an early harvest, so we're looking forward to that.
And do they
week of
surf
surfing.
anywhere off the coast of France?
Yeah, there's lots of surfing in France. Actually, that's why I surf, to tell you the truth. The first week that I was in Saint-Emilion, the owners of Troplong-Mondot took me to visit Cheval Blanc. And there was a guy there who runs it, who still runs it, Pierre Lurton. And Pierre Lurton heard I was from California and said, well, do you surf? And I said, well, I've surfed a couple times, but I couldn't really say that I surfed. And he said, oh, that is too bad because we could have surfed together. And I was like thinking to myself, we could be surfing, me and Pierre, drinking 47 Cheval Blanc on the beach. Be awesome. And so the next weekend, I called up a surf shop in La Canoë, which is not far from Bordeaux, and I said, "You guys give lessons?" And they were like, "Oh yeah, we've got lessons. We do a lesson every weekend. You can come out and do it." So every weekend, I'd go out there and take a surf lesson, and it became a real passion for me. And that was all because of Pierre Lurton. And then somebody told me, I told them this story, and they said, "I didn't know. I don't think Pierre surfs." And it turns out, apparently, he doesn't surf. So it was all a total ruse.
But look at the impact it had on you.
Yeah.
And now you're enjoying it.
He just stereotyped you.
Yeah.
You were from California,
Yeah.
so you must surf.
Surfer dude.
Do you know Pamela Anderson? But of course.
That when I was there, that was a really good way to learn French. Actually, was to watch television, and Alerte à Malibu, as they call it there, was a very good way to learn.
Awesome. That's awesome.
That's funny.
All right, one more time. How do they get in touch with you? Your social media handles and things like that.
Yeah, so I'm just Aaron Pott at social media. On social media, at Aaron Pott is I think there's a hyphen in there or something like that. But there's not a lot of Aaron Potts out there, so you'll probably be able to find it. And then www.pottwine.com with 2 T's.
Awesome.
Perfect.
And singular.
All right, man.
And all the wines are amazing.
Well, thanks for making the trip over.
Yeah, well, thanks for having
For
me.
real, Aaron. Thank you for coming
pleasure.
over. We really appreciate
Great
it.
pleasure to meet you guys finally, and I'm a listener. First-time caller, long-time listener.
There you go.
I like it. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks.